better start with we better start with the disclosure.
Okay.
I'm going to start with a disclosure.
Uh-oh.
And this is before we do the green, yellow, red. Okay. And so last week, after the green, yellow, red, based on some of our colors, I got some feedback that our statements as to why we were green, yellow, or red could
Oh,
be political.
okay.
And I just want to make sure that everyone knows, at least from my standpoint, I'm just stating this as me. Jess is very interested to see where I'm going with this. When my green, yellow, red, if I say I'm green, yellow, red, they're based on situations around me. They're not meant to be putting
Hmm.
down any sort of political party. They're not meant to influence in any certain ways. They're based on me being a human and watching things around me happen. But it's
Yeah.
not a political statement, and I am as probably, and Jess knows this, and not, I'm sorry, not everyone does, the least political person, and I don't understand. I don't try to ignore most of it, probably too much, for my own good. But my statements are not meant to be that. So if I did
Hmm.
offend anyone, I apologize.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you didn't offend me. And I will affirm you're probably the most careful when it comes to that. Uh, it's pretty hard these days. When we check in with people, this is a community, and there's lots of belief systems and values and feelings and lived experiences. This is a global community. People are all over the world in this community. And it's pretty hard to comment on world events without commenting on the state of um, what's happening in our worlds and communities. And that certainly includes politics, for good
And
or bad.
and humans are at the center of everything that we try to do. The reason we
Yeah.
call this, the reason we call this now of work is not, it's not meant to be political. So if
Yeah.
I'm just saying, and I hate doing it, I hate offending people. So if I did offend anyone, I apologize. It's not my intent. My intent is just to talk about how
Yeah.
I am feeling, which is what I would love everyone to do around green, yellow, and red, is just say how they are.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's going to be political, sometimes it's going to be financial, sometimes it's going to be geopolitical wars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all have feelings, and I think it's really important that we all are able to express our feelings. Otherwise, we lose as a society.
And it would also look a little silly if we stuck our heads in the sand and pretended things aren't happening around us that affect how we run workplaces and workforces and businesses. So I appreciate that. I hope everybody knows this is one big, safe community where we can talk about things without judgment or political stances. It's just commentary on what's happening in the world.
Yeah. So all of that being said, I'd love to get into
Wow.
how are you? Green, yellow, red. Green, great. Yellow, so-so. Red, not so good. And I agree with you, Brad. We don't have to walk on eggshells. And I mean, I think we all have to realize we're all humans sharing this world together. And,
Yeah.
no matter what our political views are whatsoever, our biggest fear should be probably war and not getting along. So
Yeah.
we all can have different opinions, but at the same time, what do we do to bring it together? Wendy, I'm sorry to hear you're yellow. Jen, I do this all the time. Here's my cell phone number. If you need to talk, please let me know. Or if you need to talk to others, I'm sure other people will be willing to reach out. But whenever I
Mm.
see red, I know people sometimes just need to be alone when they're red, but
Yeah.
whenever I see people that are red, I always like to at least offer up my like listening ear, uh, if possible. How are
Yeah.
you, Jess?
I'm pretty good. I'm
A
greenish.
pretty good equates to the color. Do we need to have an agent to do we need to have an agent to
Oh, I
determine what?
love that, Bob. Red means reach out. No, I'm pretty good. Um, Co-parenting gets messy sometimes. I feel like I'm a communication artist.
Yeah, well, I think we all have to be communication artists,
Totally.
and but especially in that situation.
Yeah.
Brett, glad to see you green. Jesse, green. Um, Green had an amazing few days at Human Tech Week. Amazing speakers from neuroscience to spirituality to collaboration with AI. Really cool. Jess, one of the things I was noticing, and our friends over at Red Thread did an event. It looks
Oh,
like I can't keep up. I can't keep up
no.
with all the events. I was supposed to be in the event in Singapore this week, and there's too much stuff going on. But there's uh, so many events
Hmm.
that it's hard to know what to attend and what not to attend.
The other thing and I can't tell if it's truly trending or if I'm just noticing it. So now it's all I notice. I feel like the smaller events, like the micro events, the communities, really tailored, sort of groups of people who are all just a more finite sort of purpose for gathering, those really seem to be taking hold. And I like that. Sometimes I worry that we go to these big and there's nothing against big industry conferences. They're inspiring, they're educational. It's a huge collection of thought leadership in one place. There's a lot of value to be gotten from that, but I sometimes I worry people don't go home with enough that's really
I agree. And
relevant.
Jess, I want to share with you, and I hope my kid wouldn't, I don't know if he even listens to this, so it probably doesn't matter. But Ben went to a huge conference, his first big conference, Ben, my 20-year-old, for those of you that don't know. And one of the things he WhatsApped me, and he's over in Asia. He WhatsApped me, he goes, I think these big conferences, I think most of the people that attend these are losers. I was like, okay, dude, you have zero EQ. We know all of that already. So you may want to, but he's like they all just kind of sit there and listen. And I
Mm,
don't think that anyone left there wanting to act. And I was like,
yeah,
well,
exactly
and
my
and he
worry.
said, the speakers, he said, and the speakers that I heard, like I've heard them all say the same thing on YouTube before.
Yeah.
So he's like, I think that there's got to be something that changes in conferences. And I mean, what I took away from what he said, which ties back to what you just said, is I think these small, intimate, collaborative, let's act together are really interesting compared to these
Hmm.
big 5,000 person event. Nothing against those,
Yeah.
but A and B, he's like, Dad, like they're talking about stuff that like is old.
Mm.
Like stuff moves so fast that if the conference only happens once a year, like what are you supposed to do for the rest of the year? Which is why communities like this are so important.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, what isn't transforming around us? What doesn't need to be disrupted? But I think this begs disruption because of, like you said, the pace of just the acceleration of everything. It's hard to put a pin in something and have it last very long.
Yeah, it really, really is. Let's talk about one big thing. I really love the one big thing. Susan, just for as someone who goes to a big conference almost every week, and he said, I think people that go to big conferences are losers. I felt the same way. So we're in the same boat there. Yes, but conceptually I agree with everything he said. EQ maybe lacking a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but once again, we're not judging, right? We need
Mhm.
all types in the world to move the world along. The next thing that we always do here is kind of one big thing and one big thing from the week. And I would love for you all to take a second and share. I always love these because they're always so important I always think they're important to take a breath. By the way, speaking of breath, Jess, I read something this morning, and I think this would be really interesting for all people to do because I did it after I read it, and then I realized that I was doing it. And
Mm,
that's if you're just scrolling, or what some people call doom scrolling, or you
mhm.
get lost, you actually stop breathing.
Oh my God.
Like because you're doom scrolling. So like actually while I was doom scrolling it, and it was this study done, I forgot where it was done, but I was like, oh my God, I'm not breathing. Like, and it was true. Like I was not doing like big breaths in, big breaths out. Like I wasn't like truly. And when I started to do it, all of a sudden what I was reading meant much more to me. So
Wow.
it was really, really interesting. A doctor did a study on this. Crazy, the doctors do studies on stuff like that. But I would love for you guys to think about it over the weekend. If all of a sudden you find yourself just taking 5 minutes to scroll, like, are you actually breathing? Because I was shocked. At first, I thought it was a joke, and then I was like, oh my God! Every time I pick up my phone and start scrolling, whether through email or whatever, I stop breathing.
Wow.
Anyway, sorry.
Now I'm going to start paying attention to that.
That's why I brought it up. So, yes, it's like getting doomed along with all the content. Yeah, yeah, Aman, I'm sorry, I didn't really finish the story. His point was this is why sometimes when you get done with scrolling, you don't feel good.
Oh, wow. I like tying in the actual physical element of doom scrolling. When I catch myself scrolling aimlessly without a purpose, like when I doom scrolling, I get so upset with myself. I put my phone away immediately. It's so easy. It happens so easily. And I try to be super aware of it. Like, what am I actually doing? I literally stop and I go, what am I actually doing here? Am I consuming anything valuable that's going to make me happier or smarter at the end of this? Put it away.
Yeah. I love some of these one big things. Leo said a 20-year-old I helped years ago said hello to me at a grocery store. That is so cool. And the person looked amazing. It's amazing how those people that you have
Wow.
sparks. I love the word spark, who you
Yeah.
have sparks with, Leo. Uh, my one big thing is this Sunday hosting a live radio hour to celebrate the artistry of 70-year-old Todd Rundgren. That's really cool. Brad, I'm sorry to hear you're recovering still, but one big thing is digesting from the event, but I'm due to send some of our work to the Brookings Institute, which is
Mm.
amazing. Lynn, our first strategic planning meeting where leadership breakouts were just I love this. We're naturally infused using ChatGPT with even thinking about it. Um, I think we're going to see much more of that, and I hope
Mm.
that people in colleges, like Jess and I teaching a little bit this year, um, start to infuse that into where it doesn't become like a hey, now go use ChatGPT, but it just becomes kind of the way we work. Any other one big things, please put them in. Jess, do you have yours?
Yeah, I always say this all the time. I learn more by watching my kids interact in their world. I, I'm always drawing parallels or analogies or whatever. So my kids, two of them had a softball clinic camp, I guess, last week and this week, as if we don't play enough softball already. More of a skills clinic, kind of preparing them for should they continue on with like an elite level of play. And at the end of the clinic, they had some older girls, not coaches, just older girls who've been through the program, playing at an elite level for a few years, kind of talk to the younger ones. And their advice, listening to their advice to the younger players, was so basic and so good. And I couldn't help but think about we've been talking a lot about entry level work and the disruption of jobs and where are kids going to learn anymore and what needs to change around education. And the coaching these older girls were giving the younger players was about a willingness to show up. Mindset first. If you don't show up on the field, ready to perform and ready to get everything out of that game that you came for, nobody can put that into you. Your coach can't put that into you. You can't get it to from other players, but you can give it to other players. And then there was about a willingness to do anything. You're not always going to get your starting position. You're not always going to get your desired role on the field or the play time you want, especially as you keep playing at a more elite level. You literally have to be the person on the team that tells your coach yes to anything. I can play there. I can do that. I can learn that. Sure, put me in, coach, was sort of the mentality that they were telling these girls. And I just thought that was so valuable. I know we both worry about sort of the emerging workforce and all the disruption that's happening and where do they find an entry point. That mindset and that put me in, coach kind of mentality is so good. And I don't know where they're going to pick it up, if not from sports, but I hope we're all kind of teaching our young people that kind of mentality and heart. It's really a kind of a heart and a mindset.
Yeah, no, I think that I agree. I love finally caught up with the Donald Knight this week,
Ah, Donald Knight, yes.
which is amazing. Um,
Oh,
that is
yeah,
really, really cool. Donald's amazing.
I know.
Um, uh, let's see. I think, let's see, Andrea said, I reconnected with a college friend after 20 years, felt like we just picked up. Mine is, thank you, Andrea, for sharing that. Mine's pretty easy. I mean, and so I love, and I spent a couple days in Toronto this week, which I always like, meeting with clients. Like it was the best part of my week was meeting with clients. And then, Jess, you know this, I do a lot of stuff, too much in the eyes of my employer for free. Where I don't like charge for my time, but I spent like 2 1-hour sessions with startup founders this week,
Mm,
just giving them some guidance. And I loved it. And they loved it, or they said they loved it at least. Where it's like they weren't thinking about stuff. Like it's like,
mm,
what if you thought about this? And what if you thought about this? And what if you thought about this? And it made me realize that people don't do enough, how do I share it? Like not networking, like collaboration. When
mhm.
starting stuff, I mean, as someone who's started a couple companies myself, like starting stuff is hard work, and you can't do it alone. If
Yeah,
you do it alone, you're probably going to do it wrong,
yeah.
because you don't have diversity of thought. So that was the best part of my week was doing that. And then I one of our amazing community members, Leah Joyner, always does brilliant events, and she actually invited me onto a webinar, with one of her clients, SVP of a credit union, and um, and once again, I just love doing stuff like that because Leah's building a business. Anything I can do to help her build the business, for me, it feels like part of my responsibility in the community. So it was so awesome to be with Leia, and I just love, uh, Steve brought my A game to that session.
Yeah.
Steve, you were on. That's cool. No, I mean, for me, it's just I just love, I love when people take chances and try to reach out and make our community better. So that was really, really fun. That was a highlight of my week to do that with Leia. I always feel when people think it's bothering me, like it's not bothering me, like it actually spurs me, uh going forward. It makes me want to do more. So oh, there's Leah. I didn't even know she was on. But anyway, that was a huge part of my week.
I love that.
Yeah. Thanks you guys for sharing your I took a chance on reaching out to JVB about today's guests, and here we are.
Yes.
Oh, that is great. I love that one.
Yeah, I'm so happy, Erin. I'm so happy. I met Erin on the phone last week after exchanging some notes. And when people ask for something and you can say yes, like just come on the show. Like
Right.
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You feel
Speak,
famous.
yeah. Speaking of which, any more things we should talk about before we bring on we sometimes we spend too much time on these 20 minutes. I try to keep it at 20 minutes when I'm looking at the clock. Anything else anyone else wants to talk about right now? Uh, that we want to talk about as a group? Going once. Jess, anything else you want to throw out?
Nope, nothing in particular.
Oh, you know what? I'll just throw out one more thing because I'm gonna forget to bring it up. Next Friday, you know where I'm gonna be.
Mm-mm. Wait, where do you, okay, tell me.
Singapore.
Oh yeah, okay, I thought that was the trip.
Yeah, so I have no idea what time it's gonna be when I do this.
Oh,
Oh, Jen, I'm sorry to hear that.
oh my gosh, wow.
Jen, I'm not sure if that explains your red. Um,
Mhm.
but uh, I hope your son is okay. And I hope the others are going to be okay.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Thank you for sharing that, Jen. I mean, I really, really appreciate that. Um, well, yeah,
Overwhelmed. Yeah, I can imagine.
things happen for a reason, Jen. Sorry, no,
Mhm.
it's not like a preaching, but all of a sudden my son's had a similar situation, and it's amazing what they learn from those things. It sounds easy to say that at the moment like this, as an outsider, but if you
Yeah.
try to infuse that in, that he'll learn something from it, I'm sure I'm sounding stupid, but we'll move on. Anyway, Jess, next week I'm going to be joining from Singapore. So
I'm so excited for you. I bet you miss Ben so much.
I do. It will be fun to spend some time.
Yeah.
So let's bring on our guest. Oh, by
Oh,
the way,
great.
we have a special executive director today
Oh,
that needs
yes.
to get called out, right?
Okay. Leah.
Leah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Leah
Thank
Tanner.
you, Leah.
Like, JC's usually behind the scenes with some weird ass cat on a leash. We have a much more normal we have a much more normal executive director today, in
Yes.
Leah, compared to compared to our normal executive director.
Is
So
that
Leah,
what-
thanks for giving JC the day off.
That's what
Dan, how are you?
How are you both?
Good,
you're
welcome.
already off to a good start. You unmuted.
I'm excited to join. I've been able to watch a few of your prior sessions and just got to make sure I've had plenty of caffeine to be able to keep up with you two, to be honest with you.
I don't know about that. Hey, if you love what you do, I think that's which I can tell you.
Goes through, yeah.
We were going back and forth with Dan on emails for some preparation for this week, and I was like, that is the most concise and long email that he sent over with great source materials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I can tell you love what you do, also, Dan, based on that email you sent over.
Yeah, I've had a very blessed career thus far, and I'm happy to be here leading marketing at Bloomfire. Been here a few years, and excited to meet people like you. I mean, this happened in part because I have a great hype person in Aaron,
Yes,
right,
you do.
to reach out to you, Jess. But honestly, it started with Mercer connecting with some content we put out around just how knowledge is going to feed into this changing world with AI, and how that influences, people, and what that's going to mean for currency in the future, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, one of the things that sorry, Jess.
Oh,
One of the things that I think after reading the work that you put together from Bloomfire, and I mean, we talk about different consulting firms or research firms or analyst firms all the time, and unfortunately, there's so many people like you that are doing amazing work that don't get recognized, just because either they don't have a loud enough horn, they don't have how many hype people can I have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, Jess and I are blessed to work for a company that is huge,
Mhm.
and we have lots, there's lots of resources that are out there. But when I read your work, I was like, dude, this stuff needs to get uh, trumpeted more.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So I kind of love for you to talk about Bloomfire,
Sure.
and then the type of work you do and how you got. I mean, I always love the background stories. Like, how did you get into this, and how did you get interested in this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been at Bloomfire, which is a software as a service company. We've been around for 10, 12 years. Um, but I came over as a customer first. So I actually bought the software in one of my corporate roles. So, I probably, Jason, my horn used to be bigger because I've worked for companies like Walmart and General Electric and Berkshire Hathaway and a short stint at Amazon. And certainly when you have a perch at those Fortune 50 companies, you have a very loud megaphone or that. Coming over to, software side, right? You have to make the right bets, and you have to put your things that are valuable out there for folks to consume, and you hope that they find them and it resonates. And so in this case, I think it is. um the reason I believe in kind of what we're doing, which is really how do you manage all those bits of knowledge for a company, and that can be broadly across an enterprise, it can be specific to a research team, it could be for a customer support team, to enable a better outcome than otherwise, right? And I think what we're seeing with AI, and you both have certainly discussed it, is it's changing the paradigm of what knowledge means to an organization. So many companies are very quick to deploy AI as a blanket, right? But if you deploy it on knowledge that isn't, relevant, isn't timely, isn't accurate, you end up with a situation where that AI may be feeding the wrong, analysis, synthesis, or answers into a company's decision making. And so we believe strongly in this idea of, let's put a value around the knowledge that's being produced by the people and around the both, you know, implicit and tacit knowledge, and then let's find a way to manage it, feed it into the system of a company, and ideally create a better outcome, whether that's in AI, whether that's, you know, call center metrics, or in the case of what we focused on in HBR, it really is about raising the entire level of a company's capabilities to show and say, look, there's millions upon millions of dollars when you really look at it that could be lost if you're not managing your knowledge appropriately.
Lost, and also opportunity not realized.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what, I think that's the crux, and we're sort of starting to move past this now. I read a term the other day. I was reading an article, and I read transformation theater for the first time. I've never seen those two words put together, but I love them. Transformation theater, which is sort of like doing the top level stuff, you know, and it looks really cool and sexy. But if you haven't done I would say the sexier stuff, but the truly fundamental foundational, like knowledge management, data infrastructure, if you haven't done that stuff, any innovation you try to put on top of it is transformation theater. I love it. I'm going to start using it. But I think it makes a good point. We've already been doing workflows and automation, and now we're getting into agentic capabilities. Like, all of this stuff is going to be transformation theater if you're not actually getting the infrastructure right and then driving a different outcome than just doing the same, you know, a workflow at a cheaper cost per unit.
Right.
Like, there should be a more strategic value add and outcome that's now a possibility if we're doing it right, which I think is the point you're making.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I sent over, and I don't know if it resonated, was, you know, my boss, our CEO, and I were talking a little bit, and we're talking about this idea of Conway's law, right? Which is essentially, you know, it's more of a guideline than a law, I guess. But, you know, the way that an organization communicates, the way they're organized, ends up being kind of indicative of what the work product's going to look like, whether that's a, you know, software system or an output. And I think, you know, there's what we've seen, and I don't know if others have as well with AI, is what happened was you had a lot of technology that was pushed out to departments for a long time, and they could make decisions and they could kind of go, hey, this is what's going to help me solve my problem. With AI, everything kind of got sucked up back into IT, you know, IS type things. And that's good and bad. It's good maybe from a security standpoint, but it also takes the focus away from what is that job to be done that person has, you know, out there in a department. Like, what am I trying to solve for? And you lose sight of that as you get further away from that department. And so depending on how an organization is set up, right, what is their structure, how do they communicate, may end up actually being a big determiner to whether some of these AI initiatives are successful or not. So anyway, Jason, looked like you were going to comment.
Well, what I was going to say, I really wanted to take a second because in going through one of your reports, these numbers really hit me. And you know, I want to get the community to think about them together in a second. 46% of employees say their days would be significantly more productive if knowledge flowed freely. I love the way that was worded, and I'd love people's thoughts on that. You know, yes or no. Mine is yes, for sure. 80% of employees, first of all, I think 46% is low, which I totally love that, the way it's worded. 80% of employees report that frictionless access to knowledge has improved their ability to make decisions. I think so many people can't get access to knowledge the way that we're structured today, and the way we've got intranets and link farms and systems that we can't sign into, and we get frustrated, and we have a low, short attention span, so we leave. I think that is such a fascinating statistic, and I totally agree that it's right. And the third one, 59% reduction in barriers to accessing information is achieved when a company adopts robust knowledge management. And this is the one that I wanted to dive into for a second, because what I thought was really interesting about this one was in the world of AI, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Is knowledge management still
Relevant?
I love what Bob said. What are the other 54% thinking? I loved that, Bob. Thank you for
The
making.
other 54% love, hunt, and peck.
Yeah,
Sorry.
like doubtful. I think the other 54% were oh, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. But anyway, I was going to say not smart enough to understand the question, but different discussion for a different time. But in the world of AI, where is knowledge management the way that we've always thought about knowledge management, which is storing stuff on the F drive, the G drive, the floppy disk. Sorry to date myself, but all that stuff. Is that how important? Is it doubly important? Is it triply important? Or does it need a fresh coat of paint or a complete detonation to say what in today's world, what does knowledge management mean?
Mm.
No, it's a really good question. I think that is the big question is what does it look like going forward in this world of AI, right? And so floppy disks aside, depending on what your definition is of kind of knowledge management, it's not been something that's been sexy enough, I guess, to catch the eye of the C-suite. So what typically happens is you'll get a group, and maybe this is a little bit of that theater that you mentioned, Jess, where it's like, oh, we need to do something about this. And then they put somebody on it and they go research it, and then they come back and they realize, oh wow, that's a lot of change management, or wow, that's a big dollar sign. And then all the executives get alligator arms, right? When the check comes, and nobody really actions it, and so it gets kind of layered into those roles without the executive authority it needs. I think what AI has done is essentially, identified two organizations and said, wow, our house is out of order, especially on the unstructured data side, right? So the structured data side has had that big business intelligence push maybe 10, 15 years ago, where everybody was suddenly going to become an expert in Power BI and they were going to push it out. And that never really happened in that way. Yes, it's extraordinarily valuable, but it never became as distributed as I think some would have had it be. In the same way, I think AI is going to go through that, where there's this recognition of, look, our unstructured data needs some love here. And so let's get to the underlying inputs to that. Let's get to the underlying connectivity across an organization. Like, you can't have these siloed organizations or siloed departments. We really do need to bring this together and have it be cohesive for an enterprise. And once that starts to happen, and we view that, in no particular terms, as this idea of an enterprise's intelligence, right? You start to be able to identify that, put work into it, and then that will lead to a better outcome for these AI initiatives. So, Jason, I think it's still very relevant, but its ultimate goal may be a little bit different than it used to be.
Yeah, and along those lines, sorry, Jess, I could geek out on this. So if I step on you, I'm really sorry. And I promise I won't after this. This one question. It is knowledge management just going to happen based on how we work going? So, before, what we had to do is we had to like make sure the document was saved in the right place. It had to be tagged in the right place. It had to be classified. And it's not classified like classified, but classified a certain way so that people could find it. In today's world, based on our technology we have, which is great, knowledge management is kind of happening automatically. Now, that doesn't mean we still don't need to bring over all the past. It doesn't mean we can just hope that the structures that it's stored in create the future. I think there's probably but I think the role is different. We're probably going from a librarian, which is what I think knowledge management used to be seen, to something else.
I would agree with that statement, Jason. I think you're on to the right piece. I think, from a technology standpoint, you can do more now, right? Like you said, you don't need to make sure, every file name has the right, set of letters after it to denote exactly.
Oh
right?
my God, Dan, like I was the worst offender. Like I have some amazing people that I've worked with over the years, and I could name them very quickly, who hate me because I never followed the naming conventions of how I should name a file,
Yep.
because no one was going to be able to find it. So,
Yeah. And in one of my last roles, when I was leading, at a Berkshire Hathaway chemical company, I actually employed 3 or 4 library science, people under my bigger team, right, who were helping to build out this platform that we were building, and eventually chose Bloomfire to be the partner in, right, which is how I became a customer before I became CMO. And the reality is, even then, 5 years ago, the technology was such you really didn't need to worry about tagging as much, because with things like deep indexing, you're getting every word into that. So yeah, the technology is going to continue to evolve it. I think the needs are still, do I have the right relevant information? Have I identified the knowledge gaps in an organization? Am I relying on am I able to get to some proactivity, right, to say, hey, Jess is working on this type of work. How do these systems end up getting to Jess before she even knows it's there? Say, hey, Jess, you're working on these things. I found these other ancillary things that are probably important to you. You should check them out, right? So I do think there's a place for those types of tools,
yeah.
But it's going to evolve.
One of the things that, and we have an, oh, Jess, sorry. I said I wasn't,
Oh, it's okay.
I was
I mean,
going to read
I want
Leo's,
you to
I was
move
going to read
on.
Leo's question, but go ahead.
I want you to move on, and I want Leo's question, but I also want to digress a little bit. I don't think it is just happening, knowledge management. I still think there's some gaps to be filled, and they're really important gaps. I'll give you an example. I got a phone call from an acquaintance in my network who asked me, have you guys done a lot? This is just an example. I'm sure everybody could come up with one. Have you guys done much around leader onboarding? Not onboarding design, leader onboarding. And I said, probably. I can imagine, because we've done a lot of onboarding, I imagine some of that has bled into leader onboarding, and I can imagine who the people are who've probably done it. But the quest I would go on to find materials, deliverables, who were the customers, did we finish the work? Was it actually Ryan or somebody else? Like, the quest I would go on to figure that out is something agents could do today. They could discover work themselves, tag it appropriately, put it in places in such a way that it's findable, so that I just have to ask a tool, hey, have we
Yeah.
done much leader onboarding work? You go and figure out if we've done anything ancillary to this. Who are the resources? Where are the deliverables? Give me some, blah. Like, that's opportunistic knowledge management that would not only present that to me, but would also tell us, Jason at Mercer, hey, you guys have done a ton of this, but you actually don't have a prepackaged solution offering you're actually bringing to market. And it looks like that's a huge opportunity with some of your customer base. Like, that's insights and forecasting. And so I think there's huge opportunity around what you said, Dan, which is kind of unstructured, but also structured. That's a combination of stuff.
Yeah.
We could be driving a lot more on the value chain around stuff we're probably doing and nobody's recognizing in a strategic way. So I had to digress a little bit.
No, I
Huge
appreciate that
opportunity
digression.
here.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say, who can I get at Mercer to talk to about, talking to Bloomfire. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the reality is that in the rush to deploy a lot of these systems as the blanket, like the getting back and building on the solid foundation is kind of, we're seeing a lot of companies come back to go, look, the first pass we took didn't stick as much. We need to go back and we need to fix the foundation a bit as we move forward. So, I think that's going to be a constant kind of thing over the next 3-4 years, where you start to see those initial AI pushes that may not have gotten as big or as deep as the company wanted them to recircle and go, well, why didn't that work? Well, actually, it was the quality of the structured or unstructured data. Let's go back and double check that and make sure that's right when we go to this next level.
Jess, that was a really good call out. Thank you for interrupting me. And one of the things I just wanted to share, and I've been doing a lot of research on this. If you take a look at the screen, I'm pulling up a screen. If none of you have ever seen this site, it's called ideabrowser.com. And what I love about it is that it's actually taking knowledge from lots of places. This happens to be the idea of the day. So, AI-powered alternative to hiring a mediator or lawyer. But what it does from a knowledge management standpoint is it's looking at, hey, keywords that people are using in their documents. Oh, look at all these keywords. Okay, what's the growth of those things? It's looking at offers, and then it's looking at, Jess, look at this, like community signals.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
oh,
I love that.
they're talking about this on Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, other places. What do the signals show us? And what do we do? And the only reason I bring that up is because if you think about knowledge management, like knowledge management in the past used to be so like it had to be in the one place, you'd go look in one file for it, et cetera, et cetera. With this concept of this being an agent, where it's basically crawling, yesterday's idea was personalized emergency preparedness kits, because a lot of people were talking about that. So I love it's kind of like enriched, if I
Hmm.
could say it. It's taking unstructured data, looking at other signals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then pulling it back together in a way that makes it so much more rich. Um, and I think that that's going to turn, I've been using this phrase a lot, knowledge into wisdom. Um,
Hmm.
because what I just showed you was a bunch of, if it was just knowledge, you'd probably be like, yeah, it's a lot of stuff. But to turn it into wisdom or actually do something with it and like, I think that's where the magic's going to happen.
No, I like that a lot, Jason. I think, taking it maybe even that next step further, because as a pragmatist who sat, kind of in executive roles at these places, I'm not sure wisdom resonates with the CFO as much as dollars do. And so that was kind of the point we were trying to make in what was an HBR was, I've had to do this in my career. I've said, hey, look, we're the work product of the team or the work product of the department is X. I need to bring that to a dollar amount, right? For somebody to go, yay or nay, this is the right thing to be doing. And ideally to get more investment. And so, we we did use kind of our deep database of folks who are Bloomfire customers, asked some questions over the past 6 months about things like knowledge flow and kind of meeting OKRs or exceeding OKRs, very people focused elements to try to get back to, all right, if the average revenue per employee is X at a company, we can actually create a calculation that says your knowledge is probably worth this outcome in dollars to different things at your organization that matters. So it allows, I think, hopefully some of our champions and some of our prospects to view knowledge in a different way and to bring it to a dollarization where the CFO can start to go, all right, I'm willing to pay for that, or I'm willing to invest in this because I recognize this is going to raise the boats of all the employees and ideally raise then the opportunity to make money. I mean, that's kind of why they're all there, right?
And then that goes, I want to get into Leo's question. Leo's
Yeah.
a community member, and I
Yeah.
love when Leo, I don't know about you, Jess, but I'm sure you do. When Leo sends us text in the middle of the week, whenever it pops up on my text, I always am excited to see what he's always sharing amazing stuff. But one of the things, and Leo's such a great, amazing human that he always keeps the humanity at the core, where I sometimes go off the tech space too much at times. Um, oh, Lynn, Jess, we have to do another show just about AI sometime. I know we keep talking
No.
about it where we can show these tools and things like that to the community that are available out there.
Yeah.
Uh, we have to get that
Maybe
scheduled.
we should just do a monthly
Or maybe
dedicated.
we just do a different show on that. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, sorry, Leo was asking about trust.
Hmm.
And how do you like, I think I've recorded 5 podcasts this week, and trust has been brought up on every one of them. Which is, how do we trust AI? How do we trust AI? And I talk about how do we trust people, and like we're kind of going like tug of war or teeter-totter on human trust, machine trust, trust. Like what do when it comes to knowledge and these tools as they get better and better. I was having a conversation with ChatGPT about something yesterday, and I was like, it gave me some very specific information about something that I was dealing with yesterday. And that, and I thought to myself, well, actually, I thought to myself about an hour and a half later, like, how do I know that's right?
Right.
Like, I just trusted it. Um,
Hmm.
And I guess, but like even based on that idea browser I just showed you, like that, I just trusted it. Like, do you deal with that a lot in the work that you deal with, is like
Yeah.
humans trusting knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've dealt with it on both sides of it, right? Both as on the client side and as a vendor. And it's, I mean, look, I think we all can sit here and say we're in uncharted territory on a lot of this stuff, right? Because it's evolving very quickly. Some companies have very good checks and balances, others don't. From the people side, I'll give you for instance, we had a new CEO join at the company where I had Bloomfire, and he had installed an 85-inch touchscreen monitor in his office, like literally 85-inch,
Wow.
right? And I was summoned to his office. This was the CEO, right? So you get summoned, and I saw him in our platform looking at a bunch of different bits of knowledge, and it all kind of came back to one person who was producing this. And so, as a newer executive there, he said, I want to talk to that person, right? Because he had read these elements and he started to connect the dots to the person who was producing the knowledge. I think ultimately, the knowledge that feeds into an LLM or feeds into any AI system is likely produced by someone. And so you go back to the source and say, does that person have expertise
Yes.
in what they're doing so that they can be a verified contributor or verified expert, right? And if they don't, that's fine. They may be learning, but how do you then kind of couch that answer based on that input, right? In terms of the technology side of it, Jason, I mean, that's the rub, right? You've got to pick your partners well. You've got to understand beyond that base level of, what is this AI doing? How is it doing it? And find partners who are willing to do it ethically and do it in a way that's repeatable and that minimizes the chances of hallucinations and the ability to make mistakes. I mean, we purposely put on, just us, right? I think others do it as well. We put pretty heavy guardrails on to say, look, if we can't get to almost certainty on some of our AI tools with an answer, we're going to tell you like, hey, you either need to rephrase the question because we don't see what you're looking for, or hey, this isn't in here. I wouldn't necessarily base an answer off of what we have in here. So we do believe that this idea of certified trusted knowledge is important when you're feeding into any AI system. If you're just turning it loose to the ugly internet, results may vary as the label says. So
you're making me recall sort of a warm, fuzzy story about my dad and my mom. My mom was a nurse her whole career. And my dad used to joke, she'd always come home with all sorts of knowledge, information, gossip from the girls at work. And she did work with all women, so it was the girls at work. And it was whatever they chatted about around the nurses' station. So whenever my dad had a very serious question about something, like, I wonder what the weather is, I wonder if it's going to storm this weekend, I wonder what, is happening in the state of the world, he'd say, take it to the girls at work and tell me what the council says. And that's kind of what we've done with the internet. And it was a cute, sort of inside joke in our family. I think with the Internet of Things, we've taken everything to the council, the Knights of the Round Table, but we still require some critical thinking and discernment as human beings about the knowledge, information that we're being presented. I heard, I don't know, there's probably a term for this and I don't know what it is, but I do have a little bit of a curiosity around all of the Chat GPT or the GPT generated content or LLM generated content becoming part of the source material that we're querying, and sort of the degradation of, perhaps maybe it can improve or maybe it will degrade, but like the more like artificially generate, do you know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
There's probably
The word I use with my team, and because a lot of them are younger, they probably don't understand this reference. There was an old Michael Keaton movie in the 90s called Multiplicity, where he makes a clone of himself and then the clone clones himself. So we kind of talk about it in this multiplicity way, right? Where we're feeding the data that the AI creates back into the data machine that feeds on itself, and that circular piece. I don't think that's the official term, although if we want to claim it, Jess, we can.
I like it. I like it.
The clone of the clone. But I mean, I think the reality is that, as this kind of, thing eats on itself, right? There's danger of it becoming, the shine kind of coming off of it and it becoming a bit, more pale in terms of, differentiation, value, right? Like how valuable is the clone of the clone? It's a question I think we're going to find out.
And I agree, it could erode trust if it's feeding on hallucination. I think hallucinations are getting better. Yes, more and more of these tools are providing citations and sources and validation. We can fact check it. I tell mine to fact check itself all the time. Prove to me this is right. Tell me where you got this. I only want these sources that I know and trust. And could this be like a Wikipedia where we humans actually validate the quality of the information? Like anybody can write a bio on Wikipedia. It doesn't make it fact, but can we go in and like, I don't know, like, do we have to, is it up to us to improve the quality of information over time? I know we went off on a tangent, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's up to us as users of what comes out of it to be good stewards of what comes out of it, right? And if you have a company culture that kind of lives and breathes by that, you'll end up with a good result. If you don't, and you're just pushing it for ultimate efficiency and you end up kind of taking more and more humans out of the loop, I think there are risks.
Yeah.
Jess, I just had to.
I know, I love John's comment.
I just had to share it since John put it out there. It made me chuckle, and then I just had to go find it. But yes, a lot of us remember Ask Jeeves. But what's really interesting is it starts to make me question. Well, I know, and once again, I always do this very late, but I start to question, like, did we trust that? Like, why did we trust that?
Right.
Or why do we trust what Google says? Or why do we trust the Bloomfire report? You know, I mean, nothing against Bloomfire, but it gets us into this whole discussion. Yeah, Bryce, why did we trust Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of yeah, it's a really interesting, it's a long discussion that we probably shouldn't bring up right at the end. Dan, what is really quickly from a Bloomfire standpoint, I'd love to have you talk a little about what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And we'll put a link in here so people can find you.
Yeah, maybe two quick things to think about, right? So, we've coined this phrase enterprise intelligence, and I think what that means to us is a few things, right? Like, let me pull out a few. Like, the connectivity of knowledge is going to be so important, right? And the ability to make sure that knowledge can live and breathe in all the places that we work, right? It needs to become of that knowledge flow. And so we focused in on a lot of making sure we have the right connections across all the tech stack, and then making sure it's for the right reasons. The other thing we're working on and is this idea of a self-healing knowledge base, right? And so we talk about redundant, outdated, trivial information, we call it rot. How do we make sure that agentically that a certified knowledge base, right? Which is one of many places one can get knowledge in an organization. But I think that's our kind of core, is make sure that we can have that be the starting point, look across the various points of knowledge inputs through an organization and heal where we need to. Because you're going to find redundancies, you're going to find knowledge gaps. And the more we can automate those and get people comfortable with saying, hey, I'm going to make a choice on this, or maybe some of the choices can be made for them. When it learns, you end up healing the foundation. You end up building a stronger foundation that then you can trust what Bloomfire says. You can trust what that tool says because it's built on solid ground.
I think there's a lot of power in that word heal.
Agree.
I really like that, especially in this context.
Well, my master's is in clinical psychology, so we'll take that for what it's worth.
No, I just think that there is a lot of healing needed with people's, knowledge. And yeah, that's a big word. I may have to write about that one this week. But yeah, it's a good
Jason,
word.
it reminds me of you of an old favorite is sort of the anti-fragile foundation, and we use that in a few ways, but it's the idea that it needs to be dynamic, it needs to be agile and responsive, whatever it is, a technology foundation, certainly a knowledge base.
Well, we talk a lot about data fitness, and to me, data fitness, we're looking forward, but that healing denotes looking backward and making sure we're moving forward together, both fitness and healed in the right direction. So
yeah,
I think that's a good way to end this. But Dan, that's my heal is my word of the weekend.
No, thank you guys very much. You guys are a pleasure, and what you're doing is important, so keep on doing it.
Hey Dan, you know what's really interesting when I don't know if do you have any pets?
2 dogs and a cat that I really didn't want that my wife did. So.
Okay. Do you ever look at your pet? Do you ever look at your pet and wonder what your pet's thinking?
Yeah, yeah, all the time. The one's usually like I want to eat, and the other one is 16, so she's probably like, I can't hear anything anymore. Just feed me, and keep me happy, and I'm good
It's
to
his
go.
bliss. Yeah.
Like literally on that call, like for the last 2 minutes when Jess was like this,
Yeah,
I was like, I wonder what she's thinking. I have a dog named Baxter that's a weird dog, and I constantly look at the dog and I'm like, what's this dog thinking? Like, and I was looking at Jess's eyes and I was like, I wonder what she's thinking right now, in this last segment.
Hmm.
yeah. I'm gonna stay out of this one. I'll let you figure that one out.
that I'm not comparing Jess to my animals. No, no,
Okay,
no,
they're
no,
gonna
no.
come
Oh
out of
my
the woodwork for
God.
you, Jason.
Oh my God. Okay, well, we're done. We're
All
done.
good, all good. I do know when I watch back these recordings, every time we do stuff, I sit like this a lot because this is my thinking pose.
That's why I said yes, it must be part of the complicated relationship. Dan, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
Thank
Jess,
you
have a
my
great
pleasure
so
weekend.
much.
anytime.
And
Thank
thank
you
you for
both.
our research. We were so happy to quote your stuff
Yeah,
in our stuff. It was a story that we needed to tell. Infrastructure is super important to transformation initiatives. So you're not doing theater. So thank you. I
And
love
Aaron Fisher, you better come back.
Yeah.
Just be not, as the hype person, that would be great. And I will talk to y'all from Singapore next week.
Thank you,
safe
everybody. Have a good
travels.
Have a
Thank
weekend.
you.
great weekend. Bye-bye.